And so now we're just going to give some general tips.
So for rec letters, this can be a really important part because teachers give you or give the admissions officer a really unique standpoint, much different than any other parts of your application. So when choosing your teachers, you want to pick teachers who can write superlatives about you and showcase some of your unique qualities. So this is like most important. So make sure that you give them all the necessary information so they can write this. They don't have to, off the top of their head, be able to write something about you, but make sure it's all data driven, that you have evidence for anything that you want them to write about, and make sure you give that to them in writing. A lot of the times teachers, like Emily stated, they have these brag sheets that they'll require you to fill out so they can really understand more about you. And that's a good time to write about anecdotes, highlight the qualities that you think you possess, and then also give them things that you're not going to be covering in your essays. So it provides a unique perspective, and then also different information, so it's not repetitive. And yeah, if you think no teacher likes you, which a lot of people think that's not true, but if you do, choose the one who has the most to say about you, maybe the one you've asked most questions to, someone who really, even if they may not like you, really knows you.
Yes. And as Nitin mentioned earlier, there are 2 cycles of college applications. One where you apply early, so November, and then regular decision, right? That's like the regular thing due in January. A lot of the times, if you look at the stats, it says that you have a higher chance of getting into a school when you apply earlier. And that stat can be a little misleading because technically, if you are applying to a school earlier, that means that you're also a better applicant because you really, really are dead set on going to that school, right? And so people get the idea that if I apply early to this school that's really prestigious, like an Ivy League or something, it's easier for me to get in. That's not necessarily true, first of all. And another thing is, if you're applying early, like there's a lot of work, right? Like all the deadlines are coming at you fast. And first semester of senior year, you're not just like a college application person, you're also having to balance like your social life. And you want to do that. Like it's senior year, it's your last year of high school. You want to enjoy yourself. And you also have classes on top of that. So take all that into consideration and recognize that this school is not the end all be all. Don't put all your hope into this one school. If you get in, that's awesome. If not, continue working on your other essays. Both of those things are very true possibilities. And as I was saying earlier, don't apply early to a school just because you think it's easier to get in. First of all, that might be a little misleading to begin with. And second of all, you want to make sure that if you're applying to a school early, you truly love that school, because if you get in, that's awesome, but you have no chance whatsoever because now it's binding, right? Like it's legally required that you go there. And if you don't, like, just apply to a school that you really like. It should be your dream school. And make sure that also that your application is well done. What often happens is that you kind of become an expert of college application with experience. And that experience for most of us comes in that winter break where you're just writing all these essays all day long. And you find that your application is much better during the regular decision round than it is in the early round. So again, you want to allow yourself to have that time to improve as a application writer, and just make sure that your application is well done and truly reflective of you. So lots of things to consider when you're applying early. And with essays, like I said, this is going to be the most time-consuming aspect of your application, and a lot of people they get, I don't know, they get really worried about this expectation that their college is going to ride on the fact of whether or not their essays are good. And to some extent that's true, but like if your essays aren't reflective of you, then that's not really serving the point, right? The essays are the one place where you can truly be yourself, where you're not defined by a number or like anything like any hard statistic. This is the one chance for you to kind of show who you are through your voice, through the topic that you write about and your experiences. So first of all, write how you talk. Just of course like a tad bit more formal, match the tone. But if you're not Shakespeare, if you don't use big words in your regular talk, then do not try and imitate somebody else, because that's not who you are. And like I said, your essay's number one priority is to be reflective of you and your personality. And along with that, you want to make sure that once you're done with your essays that you show them to people. Sometimes there can be a little like air of secrecy around your essays. You want to make sure that people aren't copying you or something. I think it's a very toxic way to look at it. No one's going to try and imitate you. You should just try to put your best work forward. And that means showing your essay to your close friends, your teachers, your parents, showing them and asking them for true and honest criticism, being open to that criticism, because they're out here to help you, but also understanding that the more people you ask, the more advice you're going to get. And a lot of the times people go all out when they're critiquing the essay. And so you might find that you're getting a lot of conflicting advice, and then you'll get really overwhelmed. Like, are you supposed to follow what your best friend is saying, or what your dad is saying, or what your teacher is saying? Like, it's a lot of advice. So at that point, it's important to recognize, again, that this is your essay, your voice. You decide how you like your essays. So let this advice be like a leading point, but ultimately you are the decision maker. Do not let anyone else come in the way of your voice shining through in your essays. And as for the topic, write about what feels natural. You don't need to write about a specific activity or a specific life-changing moment. You can write about the most mundane things, but as long as it says something about you, as long as it's something that you're excited about writing about, then that's really what's going to set your essay apart from like the daily humdrum of essays that college application people are going to read. Then when you're thinking at it from like a more strategic viewpoint, like I said, there's many different essays that you're going to send to even like one college. A lot of them will have supplemental questions, and they're going to have the main common app question, 650 words. You want to make sure that all these essays complement each other. They're not talking about the same thing. You want to make sure these essays show different aspects of your personality. I know sometimes that can be a little hard to really understand, like, who are you? Like, what are the different qualities that you have? And this is different from like the intro letter that a lot of us had to write when we were in middle school, because it didn't count back then. Now I feel like what people happen is that there's so much pressure that people forget who they are. So part of this means that you really brainstorm and self-reflect, and you think about like, what attributes do you have that is very desirable and that a college should accept you for. And you want to make sure that these traits are evenly distributed in the essays that you write, and they show the entirety of your personality. And another thing is, you should not just take this as the time to talk about your accomplishments and what you've done. It should talk about you. Your resume is kind of going to show in the activity section if you do it correctly. You don't really have to say again what you did in high school in your essay section. You can talk about them for sure, but it should again be reflective of you. So again, like, the main takeaway from here is essays are the one place where you control the narrative and you control how the admission counselor is going to view you.
And then, so for portfolios, this is a little bit more of like a niche topic, I suppose, but there are a lot of people who do end up submitting portfolios. And if that's you, then this could be helpful to you. So you usually use Lightroom to make your portfolios. Just again, like, common theme throughout all this, know what you have to do your research properly, plan it out, know the requirements for everything that you need to do. Especially because portfolios are very specific. They often do require a lot of different documents and things that you will need to accumulate yourself. So for a music portfolio, it usually requires a music resume, a rec letter, and then some videos of whatever you specialize in. And then, so for research portfolios, this depends on the school, but usually you'll need a rec letter from a research mentor and an abstract or a paper from that's related to your research. And then for an art portfolio, usually it requires 10 to 25 pieces. Again, depends on the school. Some schools do ask for your artist statement, which is like a personal statement, a resume, and a rec letter. But yes, again, do your research properly, and it should be pretty easy to accumulate all the research or experience that you have that you need for your portfolio.
This is also a very specific topic. So there's a different application process when you're an international student. So this includes myself. So I'm neither a US citizen and I do not have a green card. That means I'm not a permanent resident. And so basically what that means is that there's a little like more factors that I have to consider when I'm going through this whole process. Being an American citizen is a huge privilege. I think we all saw this with the ICE news release that was released like a month ago, regarding student visas and how they couldn't come to the US and stuff like that. So there's a lot of unpredictability. And with that, in college applications, it's a lot harder for any international student to get into any school in America. that's why it's really important for you to come up with a college list that is very reflective of you and your accomplishments, and really take a hard look at yourself. Like, you don't want to spend all this money on application fees if you feel like you won't get into that school. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to deter you from going to that school, but you have to be extremely realistic about where you're applying. And also, you need to know your visa, your immigration status completely well. I know that when I was going into this, I honestly didn't even know that I was an international citizen in the eyes of a application person. I thought I was just another, domestic student from America. I've lived here for like 10 years for most of my life. But these are some particularities in like law and legal stuff that you kind of just have to know. So really ask your parents, like, are you considered an international student or a domestic student? And this is like a hard reality to come to terms with. I know I was a little not happy about this because I feel like I'm so American, like I'm not Indian. And to know that another person who doesn't even know me is going to view me as the same person coming from India was like a little harsh. Like, I didn't really expect that. And also knowing that it'll just be so much harder to get into any school, being an international student was also something that kind of like put me down. But again, like, you can't really focus on that too much. As with any other factors in the college application process that are beyond your control, for example, legacy, your race, whatever role that may play or not play, like, this is out of your hand. You can't really focus on that anymore. So if you are an international student, the number one advice that I have for you is be smart and realistic with your college list. Don't apply to just reaches. You cannot just apply to Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Princeton, MIT, and one safety. Like, you can't do that. That's not really smart. What might happen is you end up getting rejected from all of them because a lot of these schools have self-imposed quotas between 5 to 10% of international student acceptance. So it's just really hard, right? Then you should also consider applying to some schools that are just not from the US. For example, Canadian schools, they're much more friendly with immigration. I think German schools as well. And these all offer great, opportunities for education. When you're an international student, you should also know that it's going to cost just a lot more money. A lot of applications require an extra fee. So if for a UC app, you need to submit something costs like $30. If you're international, it might cost $45. So the money adds up for sure. You will also have to pay extra. I don't really know why, but you have more expensive tuition, like $5,000, $10,000 more, and you are not eligible to fill out FAFSA or get financial aid or take out loans in the US. So if you are going to a school, you need to take the tuition and the fees into account for sure. And you can't really apply to any scholarship. You're at this place where you are neither undocumented citizen nor a US citizen. And most scholarships are targeted towards these demographics. And because you are neither, you can't really apply to any scholarship. And that sucks, but it's just the reality. And instead of fretting about it like I did and spent so much unnecessary time worrying about things that were way out of my control, you just need to move forward, make sure that your application is the best that it can be, and what will happen will happen.